Well, as we do on a Tuesday, we like to check in with Greg Bondar from Christian Voice Australia, a national think tank and advocacy group for families, liberty and faith. Greg, a special welcome back to 2020.
Delighted to be with you again, Neil.
Greg, let's start with something that's happening right now as we are speaking, something that people are describing as an alternative to the World Economic Forum. Being introduced this week, it's called the ARC, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. And we've got some of our best-known political identities who are at the helm of this. What's your appreciation of what's going on this week?
Yeah, thank you, Neil, for mentioning that, because I've been following the ARC now since early June this year. Now, this is a fundamental worldwide body, Neil, that really is looking at how best we can have a better world where every citizen can prosper, contribute and flourish in their own particular economy. And we've got notables such as John Anderson, you've got Tony Abbott, John Howard involved. And of course, Neil, it was started by a chap called Jordan Peterson. And everybody knows Jordan Peterson. But look, really, this is a great countervailing force that's needed in our world today, which is very much woke, very much anti-Christian, and attacks the Judeo-Christian foundations that we all learn to live by now.
So the World Economic Forum that we have talked about and had a lot of commentary, which has been very critical of the World Economic Forum and the way it has presented ideas, but this new one, seeking solutions which draw on humanity's highest virtues and extraordinary capacity for innovation and ingenuity. It's taking a different sort of a focus to how you might resolve some of the challenges in the world.
Absolutely right, Neil. And it is a new movement. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a new movement. It's an international movement. It has representations from various economies, countries that is. So it's going to be well represented, but it is a vision for a hopeful future, Neil, and that's what it's all about. And I think they're meeting as we speak. They started yesterday, they're meeting today and tomorrow. I've got some friends that are over there in London at the moment that are attending, and also a good friend of mine, Vishal Megawaldi, has been invited to attend as well. So it's got some very good representation, Neil.
Drawn together, it's a unique alliance from around the world, and it's not just about politics. This is interesting. Politics, business, the arts and culture. So there's a sort of a holistic focus on where this group is going, and the sort of people that they've got represented there around the table do represent all of those dimensions.
Yeah, absolutely, Neil. And the important thing here is that, you've got input from, as you said, cultural, political, economic, religious, and I think it's so important that when you come together, you've got a new movement, a movement that will give us a visionary hope for the future as we look at the way that we're, moving forward in this particular age of wokeism, Neil.
Well, I think we're going to hear a whole lot more about it. It's called the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, or ARC, an alternative to the WEF, the World Economic Forum. We'll no doubt hear some more about that in the coming times. Hey, you've been looking at a whole bunch of good issues, Greg Bondar. In fact, you've done a book review on a new book that's out called Average Joe, the Coach Joe Kennedy story, and he's going to be a guest of yours, but there's a new book that's out. What's so important about Average Joe?
Neil, this is a fundamental book that I'm going to recommend to everybody because, quite frankly, here's a chap that used to be in the Marine Corps, decided to go into being a football coach, and before he started coaching, he made a commitment to himself, Neil, and made a commitment to God that he would give thanks at the conclusion of each game for what the players had accomplished and for the opportunity to be part of their living world. Now, what happened, Neil, was some years ago, and that's in point of fact 8 years ago, he did something that was unacceptable to the school board. In other words, good old Joe, what he did was kneeled and prayed, and guess what happened?
Well, he was probably dragged before the courts.
Absolutely. And he went before the Supreme in the US. And Neil, back on June 27, 2022, the Supreme Court ruled in favour of Coach Kennedy, and he was actual fact reinstated March 2023 this year. So what a victory for religious freedom, Neil.
Interesting, isn't it? Because that whole idea of kneeling to pray, and some align that with the taking a knee, and we might recall how that took off with the Black Lives Matter movement, which was, apparently quite acceptable, and sports fields became political places of making your a political comment. But a Christian takes a knee or bows a knee to pray, and then that's not looked on well, and so getting dragged before the courts. There's a bit of a contrast there, isn't there? And that's again this sort of woke environment that we tend to live in.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that you make that point, Neil? Because here you got the Black Lives Matter, and you take a knee, for BLM, and that sort of was a wrong thing to do in a particular sporting environment. But in this case, where, for example, Joe says, I'm going to pray and take a knee and pray, everybody is against him. So isn't it interesting that how society, the media, are very quick to jeopardise the faith of people because they take a knee to bow and pray. So look, Neil, the problem we've got here is that this win is significant for everyone here in Australia and worldwide, because quite frankly it establishes the fact that religious liberty is important and we need to ensure that we protect it. So this is a great win from a legal perspective and, of course, a Christian perspective.
And, of course, great leaders are often accelerated into their great leadership positions because they take the heat on very controversial things like bowing the knee and bowing a knee before God. So there's certainly leadership there. And, of course, now he's got his book. It's a global release. I think it's been released just this past week.
Correct. Yeah, correct, Neil. And one of October 24th, actually. But, Neil, I have to tell you, if you want to read an inspirational story, a moving story, something that's going to move your heart and your faith, you've got to read it. And I said, I don't make any money out of this, Neil, but I do have him as my guest on November the 14th at 8 p.m. And he's talking to me from the USA, so it'll be a great webinar. And Neil, it brings tears to your eyes, I have to tell you.
Okay, we'll try and mention that webinar that's coming up on the 14th of November, 8 p.m. I imagine that's Eastern Daylight Saving Time for listeners to be able to connect, and I'll give the website where they can connect. Hey, some more websites blocked to protect Australians against illegal online gambling. You've been following this along closely.
Yeah. Neil, I have been following it. You know I'm an anti-gambler from a number of perspectives. As I said, my dad was a gambler, caused a lot of heartache for our family. But that aside, I am so pleased that the Australian Communications and Media Authority, Neil, the ACMA, have decided to actually take action against online gambling internet sites that are not only illegal, but also bring a lot of heartache to families, to individuals. So, in point of fact, these two companies breached the Interactive Gambling Act of 2001, and I'm so pleased because it's going to save thousands and thousands of Australians from being caught up in this, sort of environment of gambling and thinking that they're going to win. So this is a great move for Australia, Neil.
Well, anytime we watch a sporting match on television, you know that there are all sorts of advertisements for gambling organisations. Some are concerned, Greg, and I'll get your perspective here, that there is some level of, like, pandemic levels of gambling, and, of course, it captivates the hearts, especially of young men. Thoughts here around the levels? I mean, I know is pandemic too strong a word?
Yeah, no, look, interestingly, the Australian Institute of Family Studies just recently came out with a report. Now, you'll love this. The gambling industry has spent, in a period of 12 months, Neil, over $1 million on online gambling advertisements. And that is pathetic. I think that's pandemic levels. So what that means is that, online gambling is being promoted. You watch the daily news, have a look at the online gambling ads, and it's going to the heart of the family, into their lounge rooms where kids are watching it, mums and dads, and I am so pleased that the Institute has released these figures because, as you know, gambling will be controlled in the next 2 to 3 years because of a federal government review that was taking place earlier this year. So, Neil, good news, but I've got to keep stressing, stay away from gambling, because it only causes heartache for families and individuals.
Let me take you into a dimension that I guess is rarely explored, just for your thought here, because while there are legal online gambling outlets in Australia and as you say, regulated here in Australia, there is a lot of illegal gambling outlets, and there are a lot of perhaps young people who might just be a little naive and getting sucked into some of those sorts of things. But does even the presence of legal online gambling outlets actually exacerbate the likelihood that some young person is going to be taken into illegal online gambling and not be protected by Australian laws when they get scammed and ripped off?
Yeah. Exactly the point that you make is what I've been making in the media. Neil, since November 2019, 863 illegal gambling websites have been blocked because they are illegal. So what happens is, okay, you've got the legitimate gambling on-site gambling websites available, but that will lead you to ones that are illegal, and therefore what happens there is there's no protection, and what happens to the young ones, the individuals, there's a sudden urge to try and win your money back, and now it's not happening, and unfortunately websites need to be blocked. So I take my hat off to ACMA for doing that, because we don't want illegal websites, we don't want unlicensed and unregulated websites, and of course we don't want illegal publishing advertisements. So Neil, good all around, but again, don't bet, you'll never lose. In other words, I've got a campaign, Neil, which all bets off.
Okay, but 2 more illegal sites blocked. No doubt there's plenty more there. If you come across those, I guess somehow or other you can report that, or I don't know, to the Australian Communications and Media Authority, as you mentioned. So for listeners, just to be, I guess, a little vigilant, because you might have children growing into teenagers and young adults, and they might be prone to gambling. Hey, let's cast our vision across the seas. Quite a significant thing that's happened in the United States. A guy named Mike Johnson has been elected the House Speaker for the US House of Representatives. And he's a rock-solid, you might say, on-fire Christian. What are your perceptions of Mike Johnson?
Well, all I've got to say is that, this is a godly man, and I think many prayers have been answered, particularly in the USA, Neil. You know that there are a lot of woke politicians there, anti-Christian and the Anti-Judeo-Christian Foundation. All of a sudden, you've got the Speaker of the House, a Southern Baptist Convention president, said that this is a passionate, godly and prayerfully follower of Jesus Christ. So he's a wonderful man. But more importantly, Neil, what you've got here is a sense of a balance being brought into the US politics. And I think that's so important, because what we need here is that, you and I both know that what he said when in his first speech, and I love this, he says, I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. In other words, I think there was divine intervention. He's been appointed there, and it's going to bring some real godly perspective and to the US government. So Neil, let's keep praying for this chap. He's a wonderful man and a Baptist. So Mike Johnson, welcome to the world of politics as Speaker,
And to be so public with his faith, undoubtedly, and of course the Speaker, a very important role in United States governance, no doubt that as a Christian, and because, as Christians, we get locked into a position because we pick up godly wisdom on how these sort of ethical understandings on a whole lot of different areas happen. No doubt he'll probably be the target of a whole lot of accusation and attack in the coming times. I'm just anticipating that's likely to come. But, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're so public with your Christian faith, and you have such a high, prominent and powerful position. Yes, of course, there's probably going to be attacks.
Well, guess what, Neil? I just read this morning. The Democrats are out to get him. They've already accused him that he's too religious. He's going to not bring balance to the job as Speaker. He's already under attack. The media have attacked him. So, Neil, get ready for a Christian that's going to be persecuted. But you know what? Our prayers will win in the end. Because, you see, he's a man that says, okay, I'm a Christian. But I want to talk about things like limited government intervention, the rule of law, fiscal responsibility, free markets, human dignity, and get away from all that woke rubbish that the others have been talking about. So he's a man that's not only a Christian, but really wants to bring some economic value to the role as well.
And, of course, getting into now what will be an election year ahead in US politics, with him as part of the mix of what is central there, that's going to be a very interesting take as well. Hey, Greg Bondar, great getting your insights once again. Just to mention, you've got a webinar coming up with that the author, the coach. Now, that webinar is coming up this on the 14th, I think it is, the 14th of November. That's a Tuesday evening, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time for listeners. If you wanted to lock into that webinar, you can also connect with Greg Bondar at christianvoiceaustralia.blog. christianvoiceaustralia.blog. Christian Voice Australia, a national think tank and advocacy group for families, liberty and faith. Greg Bondar, thanks so much for another great update today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil, and bless you for the work that you do as well.